Welcome to another episode of the Nigerian File. I am your host, August Badagry. Hello, everyone. It's been a long while since I've put out a video. The last one, I believe, was May 2022. Reason for that is right after that video, I had both a house fire and a car accident within the last 2 weeks of May. And so that pretty much upended life for the rest of 2022. And I'm just getting back into my home since last Thanksgiving and unpacking and getting things back together and what have you. But everybody's okay. Thank God, got through it just fine. Nothing but really minor, very, very minor physical damage, if you will, very, very minor. Most of it was just losing a lot of stuff and having to replace it. But anyway, Nigeria decides 2023. This February will be the Nigeria general election, which I believe will determine really the next 60 to 100 years in Nigeria, because this will be a pivotal election. Whereas in my lifetime, I'm 50 plus, and living in Nigeria and living outside of Nigeria, this is the first time I have seen not only the youth of Nigeria. When I say youth, I refer to those in their 20s and younger, make a unified voice that is heard globally about what they want, what they desire, what their grievances are about Nigeria. And most importantly, to have the Agbalagbas, that's Yoruba for the elders or the powers that be, not only acknowledge, but in my experience, at least made overtures to at least hear what the youth are saying. Doesn't mean they have any intentions of what they're going to do, but it's the first time in my lifetime in Nigeria that I've heard the powers that be acknowledge what the youth are saying and actually have made, even if it's just surface efforts to, okay, we can't keep doing what we're doing. So I think it's very pivotal election. It's going to be a very pivotal election in Nigeria. One of the standouts is Peter Obi, I want to say former governor of Anambra State. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who know better, but I'm doing this off the top of my head. But in any case, he's the youngest candidate I can remember that has gone for the presidency that has rose to such prominence. There are other presidential candidates younger than him. However, in terms of a perceived quote-unquote front-runner, he is the youngest that I am aware of in recent history. I'm sure those of you who are more in tune will know of others, and definitely please feel free to comment in the video below with those details. He, I believe, is in his early 60s, which I know to people not familiar with Nigerian politics, you might say, well, that's kind of old. And statistically, given the median age of the country and the demographics, that is old. But looking at past presidential aspirants as well as presidents, not unlike the United States, that's on the younger end, really. Most of them are 70s, if not closer to 80. And so, anyway, more to come on that in other videos. For now, this is just a welcome back to the channel for those of you who may have seen the few I've put out. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. I will try to do a better job of putting more out as I get back up to speed in life. In the meantime, I actually found a recording I was going to put up in June of last year before I knew I was going to have a fire and an accident. So that relates to this in a sense, because it talks about my thoughts on in helping Nigeria, empowering Nigeria, is to focus more Nigeria or Nigerians, or is it both? Anyway, stay tuned. Something I've been pondering about the last couple of years is how some people, some Nigerians, choose to live outside of Nigeria in spite of the fact that they do a lot to help support, promote, invest, as well as revitalize Nigeria. On the other hand, there are Nigerians that are boots on the ground in the country living there and trying to affect the same thing. Once upon a time, I thought one was maybe better than the other. That those who had boots on the ground were somehow more invested by their presence in the country, attempting to revitalize, invest, etc. Now, I'm not so sure. I've been back 2019 and twice in 2022. And although I've managed to do things like get an NIN, get a new mobile number, get my banking cards for my accounts, get more familiar with how to get around in Lagos, in Abuja, through the airport, etc. There are others that I know, relatives, friends, who have been able to do much more, yet aren't necessarily in Nigeria. Now, in fairness, those individuals have put a lot of time on the ground over the years, so they have built systems that enable them to be effective in the country as well as without the country. Still, it's made me think about the fundamental question. Is it really about supporting Nigeria, supporting Nigerians, or is it some blend of both depending on who you are and your disposition as a Nigerian? What do I mean by that? If we're focusing on helping Nigeria, typically the sentiment is being on the ground in Nigeria, doing things in Nigeria. Whether it's starting a business, or just being there for tourism, or just visiting, or just moving there for employment or retirement. But it's physically being there and operating from Nigeria. Those outside of Nigeria, in my experience, are those who either have serious roots and investments and a framework in Nigeria that allows them to operate within as well as without Nigeria, and those who have just designed things in such a way that they have an infrastructure organization on the ground in Nigeria, so that they've established over many years, that they can now afford to be in Nigeria for limited amounts of time, and mostly outside of Nigeria where they may live. But at the end of the day, it occurs to me that if both empower Nigeria as well as Nigerians, then it's all good. And the reality is that we all have to apply what we can where we can with the strengths and resources we have. And so I've been thinking more along the lines of perhaps I should think more about how can I help from outside of Nigeria as well as being on the ground, as opposed to thinking of it in a binary sense, meaning either in Nigeria or out. Rather, maybe it's going to be a combination of both in different varying measures depending on where things are at. And so I had not really thought about that before, and so I'm thinking about it now. I don't have any concrete answers right now. This is me really just thinking out loud. And so maybe some of you listening to this may have some thoughts on your own. For those of you who do have a vision of the betterment of Nigeria and or Nigerians, how do you go about it? Are your thoughts leaning more to being in the country on the ground, doing things, or being external, but maybe investing or having emissaries or a framework that allows you to enable your vision within Nigeria without being there all the time? Let me know.